My wife dumped me for her ex a year later. He left her at the altar thinking she cheated with me. Now she wants me to fix it. Hey guys, I've got something on my mind, and I need to talk about it. It's about something that went down recently at my ex-wife's wedding. Yeah, you heard that right, to her high school sweetheart. For some background, my ex-wife, let's call her Paige, 28F, and I, 30M, were together for 3 years. We met through a mutual friend, hit it off right away, and after a few dates, we made it clear that we weren't just looking for something casual. We both agreed that if things worked out, marriage was the goal, and she had every opportunity to walk away if she wasn't sure. But in the end, she was the one who chose to leave, just 1 month after we tied the knot. A couple of months after celebrating our 2-year anniversary, I proposed, and she said yes. Up until then, things had been great between us, at least, that's what I thought. That's the only reason I even asked her to marry me. What threw me off was that after we got engaged, nothing about her behavior changed. There weren't any signs, no red flags that could have warned me she had started talking to her ex, Mitchell, her high school sweetheart, all over again. We officially got married about 9 months ago, and barely a month later, she came clean. She admitted she still had feelings for Mitchell, and that's when we filed for divorce. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but what choice did I really have? She told me she felt like she had rushed into our relationship and wasn't over Mitchell. I tried everything. I told her it was probably just a phase, that she'd come to her senses. I even got mad, tried to tell her things would work out if she just stopped talking to him. I bargained, suggested couples therapy, anything to make it work. But deep down, I knew it was already over. The moment she admitted she had been in touch with him since our engagement, all the trust one had in her just disappeared. Gone. And honestly, how do you stay with someone you can't trust? That's pretty basic. So, after some back and forth, I had to accept reality. She was still in love with him, and our marriage was over before it had even started. That same day, she packed her bags, moved out, and we began the divorce process. It was a fairly simple divorce, nothing complicated, and as soon as the mandatory 3-month waiting period in our state was up, it was finalized. Since then, I haven't heard from her directly, but I've definitely heard about her. The friend who originally introduced us, Mallory, who also happens to be my co-worker, was the one who kept me in the loop. She told me that right after Paige moved out, she immediately got back together with Mitchell, and they'd been living together ever since. 2 months ago, Mallory even mentioned that they had gotten engaged and were planning a small wedding. Paige had invited Mallory too, since they were close back in college, but Mallory turned her down. She didn't think what Paige did to me was right, and she didn't feel comfortable celebrating that relationship. Thanks to Mallory, I knew the wedding was supposed to be last week. And then, on the day of the wedding, my phone rang. It was Paige's mom's number, but I knew right away that it wasn't her, it was Paige. I had blocked her after the divorce, so this was the only way she could reach me. I was completely caught off guard. We hadn't spoken since everything ended, so I couldn't imagine what she could possibly want from me now. But out of pure curiosity, I picked up. The second I answered, she started rambling, frantic, barely making sense, telling me I needed to clear things up and let everyone know that we hadn't been in contact for months and definitely weren't having an affair. I could tell from her voice that she had been crying, and she sounded completely hysterical. Concerned, I told her to slow down and explain what was going on. That's when she told me Mitchell had left her at the altar. Apparently, just days before the wedding, he found some old messages she had supposedly sent me over the past few months. The kicker? I had no clue about any of it. I had blocked her right after we filed for divorce. I wanted nothing to do with her. So whatever messages he saw, they were completely one-sided, and I never even received them. Apparently, even though she knew I had blocked her, Paige kept sending me messages anyway. They were mostly apologies, saying I deserved better and that she was sorry for how things ended between us. The last message she sent was about 2 weeks before her wedding. In it, she said that since she was about to get married again, she wanted to apologize one last time and hoped that someday I'd be able to forgive her. She admitted she knew I wasn't seeing any of these messages, but she kept sending them anyway because, in her mind, it was her way of coping with everything. Unfortunately for her, Mitchell didn't see it that way. Instead of bringing it up with her directly, he started acting off in the days leading up to the wedding. Then, on the actual wedding day, he blindsided her with a speech in front of everyone. He flat out announced that he thought Paige was still in love with me and accused her of being confused about what she really wanted. Right there, in front of all their friends and family, he said he believed she had been having an affair with me behind his back. And because of that, he was done. He was calling off the wedding. He even went so far as to say that if she was able to throw away 3 years with me so easily, then it wouldn't be much of a stretch to assume she could cheat on him just as effortlessly. And with that, he walked away, leaving her standing at the altar. Paige, of course, ran after him, trying to explain, trying to convince him that nothing had happened, but he refused to listen. He had already made up his mind. And now, the only chance she had left, at least in her eyes, was for me to talk to him myself, to convince him that nothing was going on and that I hadn't even seen those messages because I had blocked her from the start. I told her straight up that I didn't think that was going to work. Not even a little. And I made it clear that dragging me into this mess was a terrible idea. I was about to hang up, but then she hit me with, "After everything we've been through, this is the least you could do for me." That really got under my skin. The least I could do? After what she did? After how she completely tore apart our marriage? I reminded her that I didn't owe her anything, not a damn thing. If anything, she should be grateful I even picked up the phone in the first place. Then, before she could say anything else, I hung up and blocked the number she had called me from. I was sure that was the end of it, but nope. 2 days later, I got another message from her. This time, it was on Facebook. Since I had blocked her everywhere else, she actually made a new account just to reach out to me. In the message, she told me that her wedding never happened because Mitchell refused to believe she wasn't still into me. And for some reason, she put the blame squarely on me. She was convinced that if I had just talked to Mitchell, reassured him that nothing was going on, and told him we hadn't spoken since the divorce, then he would have believed her. They would have gone through with the wedding. But because I didn't, they were broken up, and apparently, that was all my fault. I wasn't even planning on responding. I was just going to block her again and move on with my life. But for some reason, I felt like I had to say something. So, I did. I sent back a single message. "Maybe this is just karma for what you did to me. Maybe you should consider that you deserve this." And after that, I blocked her again. I didn't think much of it. I figured that was the end of it. But the next day at work, Mallory pulled me aside. She told me she had heard from Paige's parents the night before. Apparently, after getting my message, Paige had a complete breakdown. A full-blown panic attack. Her parents were blaming me for it, and to my surprise, even Mallory seemed to think I had taken things too far. She was acting a little distant and told me that, instead of kicking someone when they're down, I should have just ignored her message and been the bigger person. She thought that, even though I had every right to be upset with Paige, if I was truly that angry, I should have just left her alone. She said she always believed I was better than that. I told her, plain and simple, that I didn't want to be the better person. I wanted to be petty. I wanted to get it off my chest. That led to an argument, and since then, we haven't really been speaking. And honestly, it's been pretty lonely. Mallory was my best friend at work, and now things just feel off. Now, I can't help but wonder, is this even worth fighting over? Mallory told me the only way to fix things would be to reach out to Paige and tell her I didn't actually mean what I said, that it was just something I blurted out in the heat of the moment. I wouldn't even have to apologize, just let her know that I didn't want her spiraling over it. Apparently, ever since the wedding got called off, she's been struggling hard, and what I said just made it worse. And truth be told, I knew Paige always had a hard time dealing with things emotionally. Even when we were together, she had a lot of personal struggles, and I had always done my best to take care of her. Right now, I just can't bring myself to say that I didn't mean what I said about this being karma for Paige. Because, honestly, I did mean it. Do I feel bad that she had a breakdown over it? Yeah. And I don't like knowing that she's going through something terrible. But at the same time, I can't forget that she put me through something awful too. And sometimes, just saying sorry doesn't magically fix everything. I feel like Mallory should understand that. But instead, she's been making me feel guilty about it. And since she's one of my closest friends, I can't just ignore her opinion, it matters to me. So now, here I am, wondering if I went too far. Was I really wrong for telling my ex-wife that getting left at the altar was karma for the way she treated me? Edit. Okay, since a lot of people have been asking for more details about Mitchell and Paige's relationship, here it is. I didn't originally include it because I didn't think it was all that relevant, but since people are curious, I'll lay it out. Paige and Mitchell first got together in their junior year of high school. They lasted about a year before they broke up for the first time. According to what Paige told me while we were dating, their relationship was always on and off, and most of the time, it was because of Mitchell. She said he was incredibly insecure and couldn't handle the idea of her spending time with anyone else. If she so much as hung out with her friends without him, they'd get into a huge fight. After a while, the whole thing became toxic, and she finally ended things. But a couple of months later, he apologized, and they got back together. That lasted about 7 months before he fell back into his old habits. They broke up again. Then, when she started college, they gave it another shot. And this cycle just kept repeating for years: break up, make up, break up again. The final breakup happened when Mitchell had to move away for a job. At that point, they cut off contact completely, and by the time he came back a couple of years later, Paige had already met me and moved on. Or at least, that's what she told me. But after everything that's happened, I honestly have no idea what's true and what's a lie. When Mitchell returned, Paige and I had been together for about a year, and she seemed fully committed to our relationship. But apparently, Mitchell still wasn't over her. He started trying to reach out, ignoring the fact that she was with someone else now. Paige claimed she didn't respond, and after months of texting with no reply, he eventually backed off. But before he did, he told her he was willing to wait for her, no matter how long it took. Then, when we announced our engagement on social media, that's when Mitchell really went all in. This time, he wasn't just reaching out, he was desperate. He sent message after message, telling her he'd wait for her forever if that's what it took. That he was sure they were soulmates. That she was about to make a huge mistake marrying someone else. He started bombarding her with texts every single day. At first, she ignored him. But eventually, she gave in. She responded, not to shut him down, but supposedly just to tell him she had moved on. But clearly, neither of them actually believed that. Because they kept talking. And then, 2 weeks after our engagement announcement, she met up with him. She told me it was just for closure. That she needed to see him one last time before she could truly move on. But let's be real, that wasn't closure. That was the beginning of the end. She told me they just talked about their past, about everything that had happened between them. And after that, they agreed to stay friends. But looking back, I don't buy that for a second. From that moment on, she stayed in touch with him. And little by little, she started falling for him again. But instead of ending things with me right then and there, she convinced herself that it was just a phase. That she'd get over it. So she went through with our wedding anyway. It wasn't until after we got married, when Mitchell told her he couldn't keep talking to her anymore because he was still in love with her, that she finally realized she wasn't over him either. And that was it. That's when she came clean. The truth was, she had been fine having both of us in her life. But the second she was forced to choose, she panicked. And suddenly, she had to face the reality that she loved him, not me. So we got divorced. And here we are now. Update 1. It's been 9 days since my falling out with Mallory, and honestly, it's been awkward as hell. Our cubicles are right next to each other, and sitting next to someone who's clearly not happy with you is exhausting. So today, I decided to rip the band-aid off and just talk to her. During our lunch break, I pulled her aside and told her straight up I really value our friendship. And I don't want to lose it over something like this. Because, at the end of the day, neither of us has anything to do with Paige anymore. I told Mallory that it would be ridiculous to throw away our friendship over Paige. We weren't going to see eye to eye on this, and that was fine. We didn't have to agree on everything. Friends don't always share the same perspective, and that's okay. Besides, she had never been in my position, so she couldn't truly understand how I felt. After a few moments of silence, she finally spoke. She admitted she was glad I had reached out because, honestly, she had been planning to say the same thing to me. She told me I was right, she hadn't been in my shoes, and it wasn't fair of her to judge me for how I handled things. The reason she was upset was because she had only been thinking about Paige's mental state. Everyone knew Paige had always been fragile, and in her concern for her, Mallory had completely overlooked what I had been through. But now, she saw it differently. She realized that just because Paige had a meltdown over not getting married didn't mean my pain wasn't valid. I had been put through hell too, and she hadn't considered that. She apologized for being so one-sided in her thinking, and just like that, we were able to move past it. And honestly, it was a relief. It felt good to have things back to normal between us. During our conversation, I also found out that Paige's parents had been relentlessly pestering Mallory over the past few days, trying to get her to convince me to reach out to Paige and apologize. They were so persistent that she ended up blocking them. I have no idea why Paige and her parents think talking to me is the solution to all of her problems, but I guess they're just used to me being the one to fix everything. That was my role in her life when we were together. I was the one who took care of her, who made everything better. But that's over now. I don't want to be her problem solver anymore. So, if she's still upset about what I said to her, then that's on her. I'm not taking it back. Update 2. Before I get into the latest events, let me just say, I appreciate the support, but for everyone suggesting that Mallory and I should date, that's not happening. She's like the sister I never had. It's completely platonic, and it always will be. The idea of dating her is just absurd. We're just good friends, and that's all there is to it. Now, on to what happened next. Paige was supposed to get married a little over 2 weeks ago, but obviously, that didn't happen. Since then, I guess she had been holding out hope that I'd eventually reach out to her, tell her I didn't really mean what I said about this being karma, and somehow make things right for her. Like I mentioned before, she and her family seem convinced that I hold the key to fixing everything. And apparently, she took that idea way too seriously. Because today, when I got home from work, I found her waiting outside my house. Her car was parked right there, and the moment I pulled into my driveway, she jumped out and rushed toward me. It was obvious that she was in a bad state, her eyes were red and puffy, like she'd been crying for hours. The last thing I wanted was to get into some emotional back and forth with her, especially after a long day at work. She looked pathetic, honestly, and I was too exhausted to deal with any more drama. So, I kept it simple. I told her, as politely as I could, to leave. But she refused. She said she had to talk to me. She told me she'd been beating herself up over everything that happened, that the guilt had been eating her alive. And now, she finally understood why, because she had never properly apologized to me. She had been thinking a lot about my words, that this was karma, that she deserved what happened, and at first, she had been angry and defensive. But now, she actually believed it. And she was convinced that the only way to make things right, to move forward, was if I forgave her. And, of course, she also thought that if she could clear her conscience, maybe that would somehow bring Mitchell back. Because ever since he left her at the altar, he hadn't spoken to her at all. The whole thing sounded completely superstitious, like she was trying to make a deal with the universe or something. And I didn't really know what to say. But at the same time, it wasn't going to cost me anything to just say that I forgave her. If it helped her move on, then fine. So, she gave me a formal apology. She said she was sorry for everything, how she had lied, how she had hurt me, how she should have been honest from the start. It was awkward as hell, but I told her I forgave her. That she was free to move on now. I figured that would be the end of it. She'd say thank you, maybe give some final words, and leave. But instead, she hugged me. And then she broke down. She started crying hard. Through the tears, she told me she really, truly meant what she had said. That she deeply regretted how she treated me, and she wished more than anything that she had been honest with me from the beginning. And then, to my surprise, she said I wasn't wrong. She admitted that I had every right to refuse to talk to Mitchell on her wedding day. That I wasn't being cruel when I called this her karma. She said she had overreacted, lashed out because she wasn't ready to face the truth. But now, she understood she had been wrong all along. She told me that she had disappointed me, lost a good man, and destroyed a friendship. And the worst part? The one person she had done all of this for, Mitchell, wasn't even in her life anymore. He had left, and he wasn't coming back. She just stood there, hugging me, crying into my shoulder, and I honestly didn't know what to do. So, I just let her cry it out. Eventually, she let go, wiped her face, and told me that she was grateful. That despite everything, I had still been kind to her. That she didn't deserve it, but she appreciated it more than I could know. I was completely caught off guard by her reaction, but in the end, I just told her it was all good. And I meant it. I really do hope she finds whatever it is she's looking for. Before she left, I gently suggested that she should consider going back to therapy. It was obvious she was struggling, and she needed help sorting through everything she was going through. For a moment, it looked like she was about to start crying again, but thankfully, she held it together. She admitted that she had already been thinking about it. Ever since her life started falling apart, she had felt herself spiraling. She said she'd been having multiple panic attacks every day and couldn't even go more than 3 days without completely breaking down. And she knew that wasn't normal, it wasn't healthy. I felt bad for her, I really did. But there wasn't much else I could do. So, I just told her to hang in there, to take things one step at a time, and to hope for the best. After that, she finally got back into her car, thanked me for everything, and drove away. And just like that, it was over. It was a strange encounter, but in hindsight, I think it was the closure we both needed. I don't know if it helped her, but for me, it was what I needed to fully move on. I don't hold any grudges against her anymore. If anything, I genuinely hope she finds happiness, because she needs it. As for me, I know I'll be fine. I already feel lighter, like a weight has been lifted now that I've forgiven her and closed that chapter of my life. Update 3. So, it's been almost a year since the divorce, and honestly, life's been good. I haven't spoken to Paige in a long time, but according to Mallory, some of their old college friends said that she and Mitchell ended up getting back together. Apparently, they eloped a couple of months ago. Good for them. I really hope it works out this time. As for me, I've been focusing on myself. Work has been going well, and I even tried dating again. Went on a couple of dates, but nothing really clicked, so I decided to take a step back and work on me instead. I started working out, journaling, and even making travel plans. And on top of that, I've finally started working on my business model, something I've wanted to do for years. Turns out, Mallory's also interested in the idea, so I might already have a business partner in her. And no, before anyone asks, Mallory and I are still not dating. We're just really good friends. In fact, she actually started dating one of my cousins, and I was the one who introduced them. I'll admit, I'm kind of proud of myself for that, especially since they're going strong. I know this isn't the kind of dramatic update people might have expected, but I just wanted to share where I'm at in life. Because things do get better. I'm over Paige and everything that happened. After that last conversation where I forgave her, we didn't talk again, but I did unblock her. We don't follow each other on social media or anything, but we did exchange birthday messages, just simple, polite acknowledgements. Maybe at one point, we loved each other. Maybe she even meant well in her own way. But at this point, we're just two people being civil, with no intention of ever going back to the way things were. And honestly, that's fine with me. Life's been moving forward, and in a way, I'm grateful for everything that happened. I wouldn't wish that kind of experience on anyone, but I can say that it made me stronger than I ever thought I was. At the end of the day, things do work out, no matter how bad they seem in the moment. And with that, I think I'll wrap up this update here. Thanks to everyone who checked in, it really means a lot.